So warm Pacific greetings to all our listeners this morning or afternoon, depending on where you are logged in from. On behalf of SPTO, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. I wish to also welcome Mr. Christopher Coker, CEO of Pacific Tourism Organization, and Mr. Jameson Wong of ForwardKeys. Mr. Jameson is the Vice President, Strategic Clients and Partnerships, Asia Pacific. So today's webinar will be presented in two parts. We will announce a new partnership, followed by the presentation of the webinar titled Pacific Islands Recovery Paths, Trends and Outlook. But before I invite the speakers, I would like to go through some housekeeping rules for today's webinar. So by default, everyone will be muted, but you're most welcome to use the chat feature to send in your questions, or if you have any comments, you can please feel free to do that. And once the presentation ends, we will invite our guests to ask questions. And once you have asked a question, we would like to request you to please mute your microphone, so it gives enough time for the presenter to basically answer your question without any disruption. So with these words, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure in inviting the CEO of SPTO, Mr. Christopher Coker, to say a few words, particularly to elaborate on the partnership. Mr. Coker, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Zahia, and warm Pacific greetings, ladies and gentlemen. And it's good to see familiar friends on Zoom here throughout the globe in this case, and welcome. I would like to thank you for taking time to attend this important webinar. I'd like to also extend a warm welcome to our presenter, Mr. Jameson Wong of ForwardKeys. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all aware that COVID-19 has upended business as usual for communities and corporations. Government and private sector business leaders are protecting employees and customers while managing the economic repercussions in the wake of community lockdowns, border restrictions, consumer anxiety, and recurring uncertainty. Collaborating with like-minded partners such as ForwardKeys will be pivotal for regional tourism organizations such as SPTO, particularly during this pandemic. I am a firm believer that innovative collaboration will fast-track tourism rebuilding and strengthen our collective resilience for the long run. The importance of timely and reliable data is undeniable during these challenging and unpredictable times. We need a compass and navigator to direct and show us the way forward. It is against this backdrop that the Pacific Tourism Organization ForwardKeys are entering into this partnership with the vision of joining hands to better support SPTO member countries and industry members in the area of data and analytics. We recognize that ForwardKeys is well established in travel analytics at global level and we are very excited to work with ForwardKeys. This partnership will help our members better navigate risks and leverage opportunities through data solutions. Collaboration, as I alluded earlier, is key moving forward during this stage of post-COVID recovery, and our partnership with ForwardKeys is based on a genuine spirit of partnership in which both seek to share and enhance and complement each other's strengths, expertise, and resources, underpinning the one-team approach for travel industry trends and business intelligence. The partnership aims to show stakeholders how more relevant, more timely, and more actionable data insights and market analytics can support them to better monitor, maneuver, plan, and eventually achieve real business outcomes within the shifting travel ecosystem. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to add that our priority is to serve our members with benefits that will inject confidence and motivation during this period of recovery by focusing on positive data trends and recovering markets and providing data and analysis with solution options that empower businesses to charge forward more confidently and more effectively. With these words, I would like to now invite Mr. Jameson Wong to say a few words. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Coker. Good afternoon, all. My name is Jameson, VP of Strategic Clients as well as Partnerships here at ForwardKeys. It gives me great pleasure this morning to be here together with Chris to announce the partnership that we're entering into. Now, for us as a company, we are a B2B travel analytics company specializing in air travel. Over the past 10 years, we have been working with clients in and around of the travel ecosystem to better anticipate demand, to have better visibility on travel trends as they form up. And I think it is an understatement for me to say that over the past 2 years of the pandemic, where we have seen a revolution in terms of how people choose to travel, how people travel, and the need for reliable and fresh data, as Chris has mentioned earlier on, is the most important right now, especially when it comes to driving policy decisions that have a direct impact and a direct consequence on the trade itself. Having said that, we are very happy to now ink a partnership with the South Pacific Tourism Organization and to basically collaborate closely with you guys to serve the trade and to serve the member countries. Yeah, thank you very much. So what I'm going to do right now is let me move straight into the presentation where I will share some of the trends and outlook for the region. Okay, just to make sure that I'm sharing the right screen, you guys should be all looking at my slideshow right now. Okay, so introduction done. Also wanted to do a quick overview of some of the partners, some of our other partners that we work with, you know, the likes of UNWTO, WTTC, European Cities Marketing. So we are indeed sincerely very pleased to be working with the SPTO from here on in. Okay, so I would like to cover 3 sections today in today's webinar. We would look at global update. We would look at the regional update around the South Pacific, and I wanted to share some insights and leave you guys with some, thoughts around the new type of traveler based off what we've seen in our data so far. However, before I start, I just wanted to run through a couple of important points to note. Basic hygiene stuff, right? So first off, what is the data that we're using in today's presentation, just so everyone knows what I'm talking about and not wait until the end of the presentation to ask. Today's presentation is primarily driven by our data set called actual air tickets. Quite literally, it is actual air tickets. It's based off factual tickets issued from both airlines directly and indirectly. Okay, it is last updated as of the 19th of October, so slightly over a week ago. It's as fresh as it gets, and we are looking at 2 views. First of all, we are looking at the historical view, so start of the year all the way through to 19th of October. Importantly as well, we are also looking into the future with our forward-looking bookings. I want you guys to also bear in mind that these forward-looking bookings are based off real tickets that has been sold as of 19th of October. They are not a forecast or a projection of what we feel is going to happen, but it is based off what is going to happen as of the 19th of October based off real tickets that has been sold. Okay, so that's done. Let's kind of move into the global recovery status. Reason for this, want to give you guys a sense of how globally the different regions are performing. Okay, so on the left we have the Americas, good performance compared to the rest of us, especially here in the Asia Pacific, right? The Americas has largely been driven by the Caribbean and Central America with their relatively loosened travel restrictions plus good vaccination rates. Okay, In each of the bubbles, you would see two numbers, two figures. The top figure is essentially historical, so year to date, and the bottom figures. So in this case, for the Americas, minus 39%. These are the forward-looking on the book figures. All right. Moving to the right a little bit, in Africa and Middle East, we are seeing quite a fair bit of visiting friends and relative VFR travel, as we call it. In Europe, we are seeing a lot of intra-regional travel towards Southern Europe, especially for the summer holidays. Now, Asia Pac, minus 93% year to date, and looking forward, minus 87%. It shouldn't come as a surprise because we all know that as a region over here, we haven't really, we've kind of been behind for better or for worse in terms of opening up, right? And that's essentially what's been driving these, minus 93.5, minus 87.8% performance. Now, if we look closer within the Asia Pacific region, like I said earlier on, just due to how we are geographically spread out and physically connected, travel restrictions and the virus resurgence indeed hampered our arrivals into APAC greatly. Most of the countries in Southeast Asia and Northeast Asia remains closed for international arrivals. Frankly, the only one that I can think of in Northeast Asia that was a winner in terms of international arrivals is Macau, which was opened for travelers from mainland China, right? Yeah, technically it's considered international travel, but So moving towards the West, South Asia, Maldives actually pretty much remained open throughout the pandemic, for most part of the pandemic at least. Okay, and coming down south, Southeast Asia, Oceania, yeah, with New Zealand and Australia, the very, very tight borders with Southeast Asia, the flare-ups did not do us any justice in opening up early. Okay, one of the other things that I wanted to share is also having a global look. However, considering that today we are addressing the South Pacific members, I wanted to kind of share a little bit about performance when it comes to international travel into what I call the island/coastal destinations, right? Interestingly, one of the things that I found was that this entire list, or pretty much most of this entire list, have been driven by two source markets, if I can call them that, and that's really the Americans and the Europeans. If we look at US as a source market, it essentially accounts for 70% of all travel to the Virgin Islands, to Dominican Republic, to Costa Rica, as well as to the French Polynesia. And these numbers, these Americans traveling to the earlier mentioned four source markets, they are at a volume exceeding 2019's level. Okay, the other market that I mentioned earlier on, Europeans as a source market, we've seen that they favored Greece and Turkey for the summer holidays. I mentioned earlier on in the previous slide, Maldives in large parts remained open throughout the pandemic, and that was what has been contributing to its fairly steady performance in welcoming travelers who are trying to find a respite when it comes to everywhere else being closed. All right, Cook Island benefited greatly from the Anzac travel bubble, and Macau, again, I mentioned earlier on, has largely been driven by Chinese travelers. Okay, so just wanted to provide a sense of global performance when it comes to island/coastal destinations. Now moving into the South Pacific regional snapshot. So I want to share this slide with you guys, which essentially looks at your top 10 markets pre-COVID into the region. Okay, these should not be of a surprise to you guys. They're all the usual suspects. Look now, I want to draw your attention to the country names, and if you've noticed, I've kind of labeled them into green, orange, and red, and of course, black. Yeah, okay. Now, the reason for this, in a lot of my conversations with numerous parties, both from the NTOs, from the STOs, and from the private organizations, there's always been this. I don't want to call it obsession, but there's always been this fallback and this conversation around, our legacy source markets ready to return. Will they return? Hence why I pulled this up. And the reason why I've color coded the country labels into green, orange, and red is essentially to give you guys a sense of how ready are they to be reactivated. Okay, and the methodology behind our categorization of such is essentially based off three factors that we feel greatly impacts the country's willingness to open up and the tourists' willingness to travel to the South Pacific. Okay, so these three criteria are, first and foremost, vaccination rates. Are they at a high enough level? Secondly, are they allowing outbound travel to Fiji as of 11th of November, for example? And the last criteria is, do they require quarantine upon return home? Okay, so these three. For France and in the USA, they tick all three boxes. So high vaccination rate, they allow travel to the South Pacific, and they do not require quarantine upon return home. This makes it very, very easy for consumers to jump on a plane and travel. And it's evident, as I will show you later on in the performance. Okay. When it comes to Japan, Australia, and New Zealand, they kind of tick two boxes for now. High vaccination rate allows travel to Fiji, however, requires quarantine upon return home. So as a consumer, I'm kind of in a position to go, yeah, great, but man, that X number of days in quarantine when I do have to return home, that's gonna toughen the decision making process a little. So hence the reason why it's in orange. And lastly, Hong Kong in red fulfills only one of the criteria, which is high vaccination rate. They do not currently allow for travel to Fiji, and they require quarantine home. So again, from a consumer's point of view, I'm not even allowed to travel to Fiji, so I'm not even considering. So I guess the takeaway from this chart, or rather, I know that the takeaway from this chart would be to say, look, we all know that France and the USA is ready, and they are already traveling, right? Which of our core source markets from the past should we spend more efforts, both from a intergovernment perspective, from a private organization trying to market the destinations perspective, to reactivate them, to rejuvenate the market? Okay, so that's the purpose of this slide over here, to give you all a sense of pre-COVID source markets still relevant or ready to travel. All right. Now, moving on to the next slide over here, wanting to show you guys the on-the-book arrivals in terms of its market mix for Fiji and French Polynesia. So the dates that we are looking at right now is for arrivals between the 23rd of October all the way up to the end of the year, 31st December, with tickets being sold as of the 19th of October, 2021. Okay, for the French Polynesia, you can see that the market mix, it's basically 3/4 of it being made up of travelers from USA, a large part as well from France, followed by Canada and others. And for Fiji, a large part of it being made up by the Australians, by the Americans, and then by the others. Now, this is essentially this is a daily evolving pie chart. As we get closer towards, the reopening up, especially towards 1st of December. Every day when we update our database, we will of course receive more and more bookings being made globally for travel, right? So I do foresee that the mix it by itself in terms of proportion will give and take plus minus a little bit. However, I do feel that the Australians, the Americans, the French, they would still form up a large part of your source market for now. Okay. Now, this slide, or rather the next 4 slides, I would need to spend a little bit more time to explain to you what we're looking at because it is important. What we are looking at right now is basically a different dimension from arrivals, historical arrivals and future arrivals. What we're looking at is what we call flight ticket sales, so ticket transactions, right? Why is it important? It effectively reflects on the consumer's reaction in and around announcements and events that happen in local markets. Okay, so you can see over here, it's quite clear that whenever for the French Polynesia, there's a closure of the borders, there's a reopening of the borders, pretty much immediately or just prior, interestingly, just prior and of course post, we would see reactions globally when it comes to tickets being actually purchased for travel to French Polynesia. Okay. The first two, actually, let me just turn on my laser pointer over here. So, the first two events are border closures and reopenings. And of course, these would have a direct impact on a traveler's ability to fly in. However, I just wanted to bring your attention to the recent two events, right? Tightening of internal restrictions following a surge in cases and the easing of internal restrictions following a surge in cases, or rather a drop in cases. Across the region, across the greater Asia Pacific region, this is one of the things that I've also been noticing. There is now a gap between, there's now a gap between pushing for borders reopening, the discussion around let's reopen our borders, versus the conversation around what are some of the local restrictions. And at this point, I feel that we do need more synergization around borders opening, let's get the tourists back in, and what is the internal COVID restrictions, because that has a direct impact on the holiday experience. Okay, and I'll use Singapore as an example where I'm based. As much as we are opening up our borders very aggressively, which is great news, I must say that our local internal COVID-related restrictions are kind of lagging behind. And frankly, as a tourist, if I'm to fly into Singapore, not knowing of these restrictions and expecting a different holiday experience, especially one that is, in my mind, a pre-COVID type of holiday experience, I will be in for a not so enjoyable holiday experience, to be frank with you. We need to dine in. We can only sit together as 2 packs, even though we are a family, we share a room in the hotel. But once we walk into a restaurant, we need to sit separately. The bars and the restaurants close past 10:30. So basically what I'm trying to say is, I feel that there needs to be greater conversation around internal restrictions, local restrictions, and how that kind of impacts the holiday experience for the travelers. Okay, so yeah, so that's my point for this later two event on this flight ticket sales chart. Now, if we were to look at the next chart over here, flight ticket sales to Fiji. Uh, Fiji has been closed for the past 2 years. Okay, very, very pleased and very excited that recently the announcement on the 10th of October um, to announce its reopening to a list of approximately 28, based off my last check, 28 travel partner countries in November and officially reopening in December. Super exciting for me, and as you can see, for the consumers who have immediately booked tickets. Okay, most of the two major source markets again, USA and Australia. However, as you can see, the travelers from Australia, in terms of its performance against 2019's level, it's pretty much already at like 200% of 2019's level. So fantastic news in terms of volume, which is the blue shaded area over here, in terms of total international arrival volumes. In terms of ticket sales, it's already past 100% of 2019's level. All right. Now, the next slide, different dimension now. So the past two slides, we've been looking at flight ticket sales, flight ticket transactions on a daily, weekly basis as they are being sold. Okay. Now we are looking at the on-the-book arrivals for the rest of the year. All right. So this we are looking at on-the-book arrivals to the French Polynesia. If you look at this blue shaded area, pretty much we are already at 80% plus minus of 2019's level. And similarly for travelers from the US and from France, it's already surpassing 2019's level for most parts. Okay. Similarly for on-the-book arrivals to Fiji. Okay. I must say that when it comes to French Polynesia, because the island, the country has been open for a fair bit now, we see a fairly consistent performance, which is great, right? I haven't seen this in a while now. This is usually what I'm looking at for the past 2 years, where it's 0, 10% of 2019's level, and then gradually picking back up. So this is for Fiji. Again, great news. The reopening up does invoke a reaction in terms of travelers wanting to go to Fiji. So very, very pleased with that. Okay. Now, one thing I just want to pause over here and kind of put out this statement for you all in the audience to think about. Not specific to the numbers that I'm seeing for the South Pacific, just generally across the Asia Pacific region, right? I've seen, multiple attempts at travel bubbles, sandboxes, green zones, and right now, vaccinated travel lanes, travel partner countries, the list goes on, right? And I've also been seeing the reaction that the travelers have. Case in point, this slide over here, right? We see a lot of pickup. However, one of the things that I've also been noticing for the other sub-regions, Southeast Asia, Northeast Asia, hopefully not for the South Pacific, is that these initial spike tapers off and it drops back down. And this leads me to think that sustained demand going back to the assumption that volume is gonna stay flat, right? Even though it's, for example, 70-80% of 2019's level. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think now more work needs to be done to really bring back the crowd. So I just want to leave this thought with you guys. Okay. Okay. The last section that I wanted to kind of share with you guys today, two things to watch out for, or the one thing to watch out for is essentially, well, the travelers. We've noticed two changes. First of all, route options. with a scarcity in flights, with the whole list of country-specific, sometimes even state-specific travel restrictions, we've noticed globally that travelers are resorting to creative ways to bypass and to get into a country positively, right? I mean nothing negative about it. Traditional assumptions around, yeah, you know, I'll fly direct in is no longer the case. We are seeing an increase in people flying via new transit hubs that make it easier for them on in terms of restrictions. For example, Serbia and Mexico with their fairly loose restrictions and onwards travel partner countries. So that's the first thing that we've noticed. People are getting creative, travelers are getting creative in how they arrive in the destination. And the second thing is, well, traveler profile. Okay. So based off a number of segmentations in combination, we are seeing that the new traveler profile into the French Polynesia and Fiji combined for now, because this is what we have data on for now, okay, is that it is largely leisure travel, so not much change from pre-COVID, a slight increase. However, we see a stark increase in people booking directly with the airlines. We also see consumers choosing to pay a premium and travel in premium cabin classes, and the mix in terms of PECS per booking, we are seeing more and more, more couples, followed by families, small families. Okay, so this is what we would kind of group together as the new traveler profile for the South Pacific countries that is open. Okay. Now I'll run you through some of the data points that led us to these conclusion. So first of all, we look at the PECS profile. As you can see, you know, largely driven by leisure travelers. Okay, not much change. A good thing to note is that the average length of stay has increased drastically. All right, in terms of forward bookings for now all the way up to the end of the year, we are seeing pretty much a 50% increase from a 9 days average length of stay pre-COVID to a 2 weeks length of stay towards the end of the year. We are also seeing that almost half of all of the travelers now prefer to book with the airlines directly. So pre-COVID, 29% of them were booking directly with the airlines. 44% of the travelers were still walking into a retail travel agency. However, right now, 44% of them are choosing to book airline direct, and 29% of them are walking into a retail travel agency to make bookings. Okay, and I think the reasons are clear. When you book with the airlines directly, it offers you more control. You are clearer with the potential cancellation policies, fingers crossed, and you are more likely to be compensated with, you know, with cash or credit refunds with the airlines directly. Okay. Now, early on, I also did mention that travelers are finding more creative ways to get to destination, right? So I also wanted to share that looking at the bookings that we have for travel into Fiji and French Polynesia for now all the way up to the end of the year, 53% of these arrivals are flying in direct, as compared to a 68% share pre-pandemic. So it's a slight drop of around 15 percentage points. Okay. Travelers using one transit stop account for about 30%. Okay. And it is a huge jump from the 19% share pre-pandemic. So it is effectively an 11 percentage points jump of travelers using one transit stop. Travelers using 2 transit stops to get to Fiji and French Polynesia, right? 2 transit stops now accounts for 15% compared to 9% pre-pandemic. So you see, we are already starting to see a drop in direct itineraries and an increase in itineraries needing 1 or 2 stops. Okay. Now, if we look at the PECS per booking, pre-pandemic, couples made up around 38%, and the 3 to 5 PECS made up around 36%. Now we are looking at 50% couples and 30% 3 to 5 PECS, right? And lastly, what we are looking at over here is a shift in how people choose to travel. I can fully understand this because I think even for myself as a consumer, I would make the same decision. I think I would prefer to pay a premium and fly in a premium class of travel, if possible. Pre-COVID, if you look at 2019 share, this is pretty much what we would see globally, right? The lion's share of all travel in economy class. Right now, this is what we're seeing: 62% economy, 26% premium economy, and then 12% business. So there is a slight shift towards, or rather a pretty significant shift towards premium class of travel. Okay, so that said, that is all that I want to share this morning. I hope that it's been informative. I hope that it provided you some thoughts to ponder over, and I also hope that it provided you guys with some takeaways that will be beneficial in your day-to-day decision making now, right? So let's kind of move into Q&A. Yeah, happy to take questions now, if any. I hope there are some.
Hello, everyone. If you have any questions, you can unmute and ask Mr. Jameson Wong yourself. Or if you want, you can also share your questions on chat, and hopefully Mr. Wong can answer them.
Yeah.
Floor is open to any questions now.
Yeah, I mean, we can keep it casual. I'm okay with that. If you guys want to turn on a camera and have a conversation around some of the things that you've seen, happy for that as well.
We have a question from Kathy. Hi, Kathy. You can ask a question.
Jameson Bula, it's Kathy from Tourism Fiji. How
Hi,
are you?
Kathy. I'm good. Yes, yeah. That's why when I saw your hand come out, I was like, yeah. Yes.
Hey, my question has to do with the sentiments for safe travel. Do you have any insights on that?
Not at this point, unfortunately, and that's something that we are working on, trying to get a sense of sentiment. Not in today's presentation, I did not use any. We probably will have access to sentiment data Q1, Q2 next year. I hope earlier. Yeah. And by means of sentiment, we are predominantly relying on the searches. Yes.
Okay, great. Just because it'll also be nice to see the shift from what was appetizing before compared to post-COVID. So I just thought it'll be interesting to see.
Exactly.
And whether that correlates to any of the booking trends that are now emerging also. So just very interesting to see. Thanks, Jameson.
You're most welcome. Thanks, Kathy. Oh.
There's a question on chat from Simata. She's wondering if all your data is sourced from NTOs and National Statistic Offices. In the absence of that data, where would you source the data from?
Yes, great question. We do not source our data from the NTOs or statistics offices. We actually source it in this particular case, with the actual air tickets data set that I've used for the presentation today, we actually work closely with IATA to get all of the airlines bookings, airlines direct and indirect booking. It is far more timely, far more accurate, because it's essentially your ticket confirmation, and hence reliable. Excuse me. I hope that answers your question. And John, good to know that there is no quarantine for New South Wales and Victorian residents. I can't wait.
Jameson, just on your earlier slide that you mentioned the three factors that are dictating the bookings. Can you just repeat those three again?
Sorry, say that one more time.
The factors dictating the bookings, like for France and the US. Can you just reiterate those three factors again?
You mean the slide where I was showing the pre-COVID source markets, and it's our opinions around how ready are they to travel. Okay, so the three factors that we were looking at is effectively the vaccination rate, whether or not the country allows for travel to Fiji / the South Pacific, and the last criteria was whether or not they require quarantine upon return home. Yes, it was these three.
Okay, great. We got Mr. Finlay Matthew with his hand up.
Matthew,
go ahead.
Yes, please.
Thanks, Jameson, for the presentation, and I'm glad someone asked the previous question around your data source, and I can vouch for that data. We use it ourselves, so it is a good data source. So that's pleasing to note. But just going back to your slides, they weren't numbered, so I can't tell you which one it was, but on the book arrivals to Fiji was a following slide. I think it's that one. Let's have a look. I just wonder about the data and the interpretation. Yes, that's it. So that one there shows the USA arrivals above Australia, but if you go back one or two slides,
this one?
That one there, it showed Australia above the USA. So what do you make of that? Is it different times in travel, or what is it there?
Yeah, okay, so the key difference between these two slides, and that's a great question and a great catch, Matthew. The key difference between these two slides is that for this particular one that's on screen now, we are showing flight ticket sales, right, on a weekly basis for travel to Fiji at any point in the future. So what this is telling me is that when the announcement for Fiji reopening, and I guess also partly due to the recent weeks whereby there's been a lot of aggressive announcements in New South Wales and in Victoria, and also at federal level when it comes to reopening of Australia, that was driving a lot of these bookings. And keep in mind that this is for any point of travel in the future, okay? Whereas for this, what we're looking at is on the book arrivals from now until the rest of the year. So one of the reasons could be that majority of these bookings that were being made for travel from Australia to Fiji are for travel after the new year. You get the difference over here?
I guess the real small snapshot at the end of the previous slide, I guess there must be an inverted point somewhere, and I guess it just sort of doesn't quite. Yeah. All right, thank you.
No problem, no problem. Any other questions?
Hi, Jameson, if you can just go forward to the slide on the new traveler.
This one?
Yeah. If anyone has any questions, please do raise your hand or give us a chat. But yeah, James, can you just reiterate this the new traveler to the Pacific?
Yeah, sure. So for this entire section, right? My point is that we need to bear in mind, or rather, we need to be conscious of the fact that how people fly into a destination might not be as straightforward today as they were, pre-COVID, right? With the extensive airline networks, with the lack of any restrictions. What we are seeing is that travelers, if they have to, are also looking at different route permutations. All right. So that's the first point that I wanted to highlight with this section. And the second point for this section is really, we are essentially looking at a new traveler profile, right? Largely leisure. However, this is quite the same for the South Pacific region. I guess the one with a significant jump is direct bookings with the airlines, premium class cabin, and then also couple travelers, followed by family travelers. These three. And why am I mentioning this? With to a certain extent, with the NTOs and with the private organizations, this is going to change how you guys do, trade shows, for example, who you guys do partnerships with, in wanting to tap into these markets. Yep. Atama, I hope that addresses your point.
Yeah, thank you, Jameson. Just another thing, something that we've noticed with that gets a lot of gets asked a lot during our webinars. It's on travel insurance. Is that something? Is there any data you guys have on that? Any insight?
Not at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not at this point. But that's a good question. Actually, even for myself as a consumer, that's one of the things that I have not put the effort into looking at it yet. However, I do know that it is significantly more expensive now. It costs me for a one-trip insurance the same as to what I would pay an annual travel insurance policy pre-COVID. I'm sorry, but that's all of the insight I can offer you at this point from my own personal anecdote.
Okay, thank you for that, Jason. Okay, floor still open for any other last questions if you'd like to ask. Still the same. You can unmute and ask yourself, or also through chat. But yeah, floor is open for any questions. We'll just have one last question, then we'll around.
Yep.
Well, I think there's no more questions, Jameson. Thank you very much for well presented.
Thank you.
Well, for a great presentation. Very insightful, very informative. We're thankful for everyone who's taken time to join us today for our webinar. As I said before, these webinars are recorded and will also be available on our social media channels, and it was live streamed on Facebook. It will be also shared in our Pacific Pulse newsletter. So look out for it in our next week's Pacific Pulse newsletter. And again, I thank you all for taking time to join us here on our for our SPTO monthly webinars. And thank you very much to ForwardKeys and James and Wong, and also Lee Wen for great presentation. Keep safe and have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Atama. Thank you everyone for your time this afternoon. We look forward to doing more as part of this ongoing partnership. So I'm sure that this would not be the last time that both organizations come together to provide a a platform to share the latest trends and insights for the Pacific region. So thank you all very much.